Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the eDiscovery channel. This is Tom O'Connor from New Orleans, Louisiana, as always. And also, as always, I'm joined by Rocky Messing, live from Tel Aviv, Israel. Rocky, how are you today?
I'm doing great. It's been a good week so far.
Excellent. And we are very pleased today to have as our special guest Kelly Twigger, live from, you still in Boulder, Kelly?
I am still in Boulder.
Boulder, Colorado. Kelly, many of you I'm sure know, is an eminent attorney in the e-discovery field, has really two businesses. ESI Attorneys is their consulting shop, right, Kel?
Yep.
And e-discovery Assistant, maybe a lot of people don't know about that. We'll talk about that in a minute, but e-discovery Assistant is a great product that's a curated case law database, in essence, which is phenomenal. And I say that because I've used it and really like it. But I want to start off first before we get there, Kelly. We talk a lot in these interviews about transitions, and you've had two big transitions in your career. One was you went from a BigLaw e-discovery practice at Quarles and Brady in Milwaukee. Right. Yeah. But before that, you had an even more interesting one to me as someone who grew up with a dad who was a high school basketball coach. You played top-level women's NCAA basketball in the United States. And as I recall, you told me you actually, once your team went to the championship game at the NCAA.
We played in the Final Four.
Final Four. Okay.
Did not make it to the championship game, unfortunately.
Okay. Well, stomped by the Borg known as UConn.
Well, I played Division III, so UConn is Division I, and we would not have gotten close to even. I think one of the UConn players could have beat our team, but it was definitely a privilege to play in the Final Four. No, we got beat by a team that sort of epitomizes the fact that you can win with a lot of heart. So if there were ever a Hoosier story, we experienced it in the Final Four, because this was a team that had, at the very beginning of their season, had a major bus accident, and they lost two of their players. Ooh. And so their entire season was just all heart. And, we didn't show up for that. And but it was still a phenomenal experience. And
what school was that?
I went to Washington University in St. Louis.
St. Louis.
Yeah. It's a D3 school. We play in the University Athletic Association. So we play University of Chicago, University of Rochester, Emory. Those were, there's 8 or 9 schools that we play.
Yeah.
So, yeah. We did a lot of traveling. It was a pretty intense program from October through spring break, depending on whether we were in the NCAA tournament. So we played in the NCAA tournament every year. And then we won our conference every year. And then we were in the Final Four my sophomore year.
Yeah. So how did you make that transition from big-time college basketball player to the equally bloodthirsty field of trial lawyer?
I originally went to law school for sports law. So you guys know this, but I'm a sports nut. I mean, we just went for basketball. So I originally went to Marquette because they were supposed to be one of 2 schools in the country that had a sports law program. Okay. It's fair to say that at the time it was more fledgling than it is now. And it was a little bit more about, if you have contacts, we can help you make those work, and you need to focus on contract and tax law, than it was about it being a program. But while I was in law school, I think Marquette was a great choice for me because it was a very practical law school. We had, by the time I graduated from law school, I had clerked for a federal magistrate judge for a semester and written 2 opinions that got published. I had worked as a prosecutor for the Milwaukee County Prosecutor's Office for a year in domestic violence court. And I had worked in-house at Northwestern Mutual Life Insurance Company. So I had a wealth of experience to choose from. And I was also an intern or a summer associate at Quarles. So by the time I graduated, I tried a lot of different areas of the law. And so it was a huge opportunity. So I think that my segue sort of came in just trying all those different things and seeing what fit. And I ended up staying with what was at that time complex commercial litigation. A lot of my original work was in complex engineering cases. And because we have the diploma privilege in Wisconsin, which is a big issue right now with regard to the bar exam, I took my first deposition 3 hours after I got sworn in. So I was already working at Quarles. I had been a summer associate. After graduation, fortunately, the job market was good, so I had a few offers to choose from. I chose to stay at Quarles, and I started working there in December of my third year as law student. And I literally took my first deposition. Like, I drove from the courthouse getting sworn in, kissed my family goodbye, and drove to some rural place in Wisconsin to take a deposition.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Cool. Great story.
That's quite a way to jump right in. It's
Yeah. Well, it was, I was lucky enough to work for an attorney who, that was sort of his motto. Here you go, swim. And so it was a great experience for me, though, because that's the kind of environment that I thrive in. And he was a terrific mentor. So I got very lucky from that perspective.
Great.
Cool. And then how did technology start ending up on your plate? Because, I mean, obviously, you're well known now as the ESI attorney, and that doesn't come naturally to most attorneys. It's something that
You guys are layering it on for me today. First eminent and now the ESI attorney. I'm going to get a big head here.
We're in the softball business.
Yeah. From a technology perspective, I started building computers. My first job was building clone computers when I was 18. Wow. I worked for, way back then, you got all these component parts and somebody ordered what they wanted and you put them all together and stuck them in a box. And then when they didn't work, they shipped them back and you shipped them a new one. And so, I'm a Mac girl, but my son just ordered his first PC and there was a discussion about whether or not we would put it all together. So the notion that mom actually knew how to build a computer was quite a foreign notion for him. So that's what kind of my harkings back to technology. And then, I had a lot of involvement with our litigation support group at Quarles in terms of, I graduated from law school in 97. So, everybody was really using summation at that point in time. And we were doing all the things you don't want to do, like rescanning emails that you've already printed out and coding them and OCRing them and those kinds of things. And so I was front and center of being on the committee to evaluate all the new technologies as new platforms started to evolve and things like that. And then in 2004, I believe it was 2003, 2004, I went to the first ever ABA conference on EDiscovery, and it was a very small conference room of maybe about 25, 30 people, names you'd recognize. Judge Shinlin was there, Jonathan Redgrave, Ashish Prasad, other folks were. That was the first time we were sitting around talking about what was actually happening in the Zuba Lake cases right then. And I left that conference and went back to Quarles and said, guys, we got to pay attention here. And, so we formed our committee in our practice area and put together training for our firm. And that's really how our records and information group grew at Quarles. And I was an associate at the time. When I became a partner, I took over the committee. We had about 24 people between records and information management, librarians and stuff. And we were doing a lot of what we do right now with ESI attorneys, advising clients on their risks in electronic information, helping them get their, we use the term data map, but really understanding their data systems. And there's kind of an interesting phenomenon that came out of it, that as we looked at them from a legal perspective, we were helping IT identify a lot of overlap and a lot of extra licensing, things that they were paying for that they didn't really need to be. So it became a real blend of IT and frankly, I guess I've never been afraid to ask the question that I don't know the answer to. So I would sit down with tons of IT professionals and just have them teach me. If they used a word I didn't know, I would have them explain it to me. And, I'd have them show me things and physically walk me through setup of, an Exchange server and things like that. So I learned by asking questions and getting involved. And now Our role is primarily really to liaise for our client legal departments with IT and then act as discovery counsel. So we already know their systems and we know where the pain points are. We know what the issues are when we hear about a new case that needs to be handled. And so we can make good decisions quickly about scope of preservation and identification. And so that leads us to be able to focus more economically. So that's a long-winded answer to your question.
No, that's great. That's great.
Yeah. And do you think, I've been wondering about this for a little while. I've been trying to decide, do you think that it's more valuable for a attorney to start specializing in e-discovery and the legal technology, or is it more valuable for someone who came up through the technology space who doesn't necessarily have a legal degree, but is focused on the technical aspects of it and then learns the legal parts that they need to know? Because a lot of the people who end up watching our interviews are they're not attorneys. They're coming up through the
I got to interject here. We need to keep those two groups as far apart as possible, because that's how I make a living. Is interpreting between those two groups of people.
But I think the answer is both. I think the answer is both, Rocky. I think one, lawyers need to understand what they need to understand about e-discovery for the types of cases that they handle. I don't think that all litigators can be experts in e-discovery. My view has been this way since 2004, that this is an entirely new substantive area of practice. I know that bars don't want to recognize it, and I mean, that's your own stupidity. I don't know what to tell you about that. But
tell us what you really think, Kelly.
It's its own area. I mean, that's all I do 24 hours a day, and I still can't be on top of everything that's happening. So I think that lawyers need to know what they need to know to issue spot. That's what our job is as lawyers, is to recognize issues that we need to pay attention to. If you don't understand enough about the technologies that your client's using to issue spot, you're not doing your job. I think from the technical people's perspective, if litigation support folks or technical people, however you want to define them, knew more about the legal side of data, whether it's privacy or e-discovery related, that they would be able to make better decisions. And I think cost benefit analysis, ROI, I think even just if you're the guy loading the data and you understand the implications of things, you can at least issue spot and raise issues for your lawyers that you don't otherwise know.
Yeah.
So
no,
why aren't, I'm sorry, just a quick interjection again, Rocky. Why, I'll leave the bar associations out of it. They're clueless. Why aren't law schools providing some of that training? Why are we left to our own devices to figure this out?
Well, I think there's two main reasons. One, I think some are trying to, right? I mean, Bill Hamilton and what they're doing at Florida is a phenomenal example of a program. I think it's an anomaly.
That's one.
I think that Craig Ball's class is very interesting, what he does at Texas, but it is very different than what Bill does. I think what I have understood and what I do understand is that law school deans as a whole think, where am I supposed to fit this in an already packed curriculum when I've got budget cuts and teachers and all those budgetary pressures? So that's one problem, is seeing the value in the curriculum. And I don't know that anybody sat down with the deans from law schools and really explained it. The second problem I see is you got to have somebody teaching it that's doing it. And if you don't have somebody teaching it that's doing it, you're not staying up to date on what's happening. And getting somebody who's doing it to teach it takes a ton of time. I mean, putting together a real e-discovery course takes a ton of time. For a while, Bill Hamilton had a roster of folks teaching across the country, and we were sharing syllabuses and exams and trying to put problems together. And that was helpful. But, you need software, you need to teach them software. And then the question becomes, what do you teach? I mean, there should be a practical skills and a theoretical, discussing the legal issues and doing the practical skills. Those are two totally different things. I mean, you could have 2 or 3 classes in e-discovery and still only scratch the surface for lawyers.
Yep.
Right. And it's also a question of where do you, like, how early, not in the coursework, but where do you actually start? Like, there's some things from the base of what a attorney is going to need to know in order to understand e-discovery that a lot of attorneys have no idea. So
and so this is interesting because I've started and I'm be thrilled for anybody who's watching this to reach out to me because we're putting together a group of law students. I've had a number of law students come to me recently asking me questions about articles that I've written or things like that. And so we started to put together this group and identify a number of practical things that law students aren't learning anything about at law school. So we could talk about, they don't know anything about discovery. They don't know what a request for production is. They don't know what a request for admission is. They don't know what an interrogatory is and how you use them or how you shape them or what it means to ask for all communications for 5 years between 200 people. And so they don't know what an affidavit is or how to authenticate social media evidence. So I agree with you 100% that you can't just have first years taking e-discovery when they don't have any basis for it. But I struggle to think how many schools are really providing practical discovery skills such that you would have the basis to do e-discovery training.
And that's where I think it would fit. I mean, there's an obvious place where it would fit was either in Civil Pro or the discovery process. And let's circle back to the bar associations. With the increased number of bars who are requiring technical competence as part of your admission, I think that's going to ratchet the pressure up on the law schools over the next few years, because I think we're up around 37, 38 states now have a very ill-defined. Well, that's my point exactly. They haven't said what that means.
Right.
So there's some real heartburn about that from members of the bar in some of the states. Like, you can't tell me I got to be qualified in something or skilled in something without, what does that mean? I don't use 8 tracks anymore to listen to my music. I mean, what is technical competence? What does that mean? So yeah, you're right, Kelly. They kind of rushed willy-nilly to implement this very vague ABA model rule without any guidelines around what that means.
I think that the entire area now around the AI is just going to push that even further because it's at least from a discovery standpoint, you have some, if you've taken discovery, you understand the concepts of discovery in general. Okay, I understand the ideas behind what I need to do from a gathering evidence, documents, whatever the request for production is going to define. And I have some sense of how to tailor that. I think now when you start adding in the usage of ML and AI at a corporate level, which is just shooting up. I mean, it's been a buzzword for a couple of years, but now you're actually seeing a lot of practical uses or uses of AI in the corporation.
Yeah.
It's now also beginning to seep its way into both discovery and an understanding of how corporations work. Right. So as an attorney who needs to understand your client, I think that just brings that level of competence even higher. It sets the bar higher. And you're not learning that in law school. You're generally not going to learn it in undergrad either because you're not taking computer science in general if you're going to law school.
So, Kelly, are you seeing in your opponents any raised level of competence? I mean, are we getting more people who understand this more, or is it still just us really cool kids on the block?
Well, we are cool kids, so
yeah.
But
cool is very different than our definitions.
Said the man wearing the Baltimore Ravens T-shirt.
Exactly. Yes. It depends, Tom. It really depends. I see lawyers taking screenshots of social media who are at very prominent firms and not understanding there's real authentication problems, and then add them to trial exhibit lists. But then I see people who are willing to sit down and really iterate on an ESI protocol and resolutions. I do see people who are better at it trying to take advantage. And so I still do think that I just think there's so many details inherent that if you don't have somebody who really knows this stuff sitting down with you at the beginning of the case and making sure you're identifying all the issues that need to be addressed in an ESI protocol and thought through at the beginning of a case, that you're really setting yourself up for failure. And that failure, of course, grows exponentially with the value of a case.
So many bars have specialization, accreditation, if you will, for areas like family law or bankruptcy or down here in Louisiana, maritime law. Should they start thinking about doing one for e-discovery?
I don't think it's a bad idea.
It is, like you said, there's so much to it. It's not you can't take a couple of hours of CLE at Legal Tech in New York every January and
no.
Be on top of it.
What I think is really interesting is we've started doing a lot more blog writing for EDiscovery Assistant, particularly about case law that's coming out. And I just put out a new post this morning. They'll go out after we record this, about a case that just came out, quashing a subpoena in a Rule 35, so a third-party subpoena case. And it's about video evidence that's very timely because of everything that's happening in Chicago right now. And I just think that in those kinds of situations, if you read the case, it's kind of clear that the court knew how to do the proportionality analysis and the factor consideration, but it is not clear that the parties arguing the motion actually laid that out for the court. And so I think if you have counsel who don't necessarily know how to put everything out for the court, and you have a court that isn't going to go in and find that analysis on its own, you're not going to win. It's not going to come out the way that the law says it should come out.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So I think, every day there's something new and different. Yesterday I sat down with our team at ESI and we were talking about, okay, this is the process that we've been following for the last few cases. Here are the lessons that we've learned, and how can we change our process to increase efficiencies and reduce some of this overage that we know that we have? And how can we go to the client and show through technology what it is that we're doing better and different? So we have our process always includes a post-case debrief, if you will, of reviewing kind of how things went and where we can put things in place better to avoid whatever happened that we wish happened differently.
Right.
How big are you guys? How many people?
I'm sorry?
Our combined team between EDiscovery Assistant and ESI, because we overlap, is about 12.
Cool.
Yeah.
So, and who do you see? So, if a client is looking for that level of advice, do you see that your biggest competitors are like the Big Four, or are they the large e-discovery vendors? Like, are they the law firms, other law firms? Like, who do you see as your competition?
Well, I suppose it depends on what you're looking for in terms of the competition. We handle data for our clients that want us to handle data. We don't handle data for all of our clients. But I don't try to compete with providers for those services. That's not the goal. The goal is to manage the strategic decisions associated with the data. In terms of our competition, I guess it would be other lawyers who are in the e-discovery space that are trying to have their clients have a consistent basis for making decisions. So that's our goal with our clients. But we have a different model, I guess, Rocky, than a lot of firms do. So it's hard for me to answer your question directly. I'm not trying to be evasive, but we tend to work more as an operational business partner with our clients, where we'll participate in their meetings and understand what changes are being made in IT and how those impact risk decisions that we've made, and if they move to a different outsourcing provider, how that changes the legal hold process, and whether there's a cost benefit analysis that at one point it doesn't make sense to implement technology, but if we hit this point, then it might make sense to implement technology. And so we do that, and then we do act as discovery counsel through the whole process. So I think our model is very different than most other either law firms or service providers. So it's really kind of a unique position. We partner with service providers with technology. And sometimes services, project management, sometimes depending on, as our work goes up and down. So it's, and we partner with law firms. Most all of our clients, their merits counsel are the largest of the largest law firms, so we're working with them all the time.
Do you see the Deloittes and KPMGs and as there's been a lot of talk over the last 2 years of them moving into the more formalized legal space, and do you see them more than you did before, or is it kind of just they're out there?
I'm not negotiating on the other side with them or anything like that, but I don't know that it's been an issue lately, but a few years ago, or maybe several years ago now, they seem to go faster than I realized, that there was some pretty definitive advice. Maybe it was even from Judge Facciola, about the line that consultants could cross when it came to the practice of law. And so if you're not a lawyer, there is a line that you can't cross. And that's why ESI Attorneys is a law firm and not a consultancy. And the reality is that's a business decision with negative implications for a law firm, because ethically the law firm is not bound, does not have the ability to do business in the regular way that a business can do business. And frankly, I think it's a terrible limitation, and I could have a whole nother interview all about that. But, that's why you see these large law firms setting up e-discovery service companies within the firm, because of those ethical issues. They cannot partner. You cannot do things under the guise of a law firm the way that you can otherwise, and in business because of our ethics rules. So it puts a huge crimp on us, but at the same time, we offer legal advice, and we're willing to stand behind it, and we'll appear in court and stand up in front of the judge as necessary. And I've argued motions in cases and appeared as counsel. In other cases, we choose not to for strategic purposes. So it's, but no, we offer legal advice, and that's why we're a law firm.
Cool. So let's say you weren't a law firm or an attorney. What would you want to be doing otherwise?
Color commentary on ESPN.
For all sports? Or hold on, let's get specific here.
Oh, I sort of like Joe Buck's role, A
little baseball, a little basketball, some Olympics or something.
Pretty much all of it. Pretty much all of it. Golf. I love golf. Yeah. Golf, baseball, basketball. I don't know enough about hockey, but I do love it. Yeah. So, that sort of thing. Although I don't know that I've ever seen Joe get involved with hockey, but yeah.
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 It's funny. I saw CNN had Bob Costas on the other night talking about the whole thing.
I've seen him. Mm-hmm.
He's done a really nice job blending over from being a sports caller, an announcer, a play-by-play guy, to a commentator on sports, to a commentator on society. So that's been a really interesting transition. Of course, he's a baseball maniac. He loves baseball. So his historical sense of baseball is great.
If I had to pick one sport, I would definitely pick basketball. That is my first and true love. And my family can tell you that I grew up a Kentucky basketball fan because we were 10 minutes from Rupp Arena. And so Kentucky basketball is religion, and oftentimes no one else wants to be in the room with me while I'm watching. So,
Rocky, you would appreciate the University of Kentucky because the Rupp Arena has a hotel joined to it, attached to it. And in the lobby of the hotel is a cigar shop.
Cigar
Yeah.
bar?
Of course, is a very
Yes.
big smoking state.
Yes.
And it is about as big as the room that I'm in right now.
It's
a
a big
small
room.
room with literally, I mean, the whole store is a humidor. It's that small. And they just
Right.
keep it, and with stacks of boxes of cigars, like 6 feet tall. A wonderful selection. I was in heaven when I went there.
Yeah. There's a whole array of shops there.
Oh yeah, they have the little mall and
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
So they,
of course,
they
a lot of Kentucky memorabilia as you would expect, but
Mhm.
it's a really nice setting. That whole square around it, and some of the shops and restaurants, within several blocks. Nice little town, Lexington.
Yeah. Rupp Arena is also very famous for its ice cream. Jay Billis is always commenting on the fact that Rupp Arena has the best ice cream
Really?
during the times
Oh.
that he makes it to Rupp Arena.
Cool.
Yeah, chocolate line ice cream cones, with soft serve.
Right.
when we can travel again, I will make it to Kentucky, but
We'll
one
have to
day.
do a broadcast from Lexington. Yeah, that'd be
Yeah.
fun.
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Okay, so you do play-by-play or commentary
Just
for
color.
yes,
No color, not play-by-play. Just color.
Okay.
Color commentary.
okay, very cool, very
Yeah.
cool. That's something a little different. See, a lot of times when people are talking in to attorneys, and they think that they're very one thing on their mind and that's it, and law, and but people have lives. Come on, they want to do different stuff.
Right. Yeah.
Anyway, cool, awesome. Well, Tom, why don't you? Actually, before we wrap up, I actually wanted to, because we talked a lot about ESI side of things, but let's talk about the other side for a second. Tell us a little bit about that.
Okay. Yeah. So in 2012, so ESI, I started ESI in 2009. So we're year 11, I guess. And in 2012, it just became too much to keep up with all of the case law and the rule changes that were happening so rapidly. Starting in 2006, we started to see roughly 200 decisions on EDiscovery. And, you guys know, you usually see maybe one or two substantive decisions that alter your arguments in an area of the law. And so I started building EDiscovery Assistant as a way for us to keep track of the case law and the rule changes that were happening for our work at ESI attorneys. We get calls from clients all the time who will say, we have a new case in the District of North Carolina. What are we going to do? Western District, North Carolina. What are we going to do? And so we built EDiscovery Assistant so that we could immediately drill into the decisions by a specific judge in the Northern District of, whichever jurisdiction in Northern District of Illinois, and be able to know right away what that judge was saying on discovery and what the rules were in that jurisdiction. And so we built it. We originally built it as a native iPad app, which was before you had, way before, in 2013, before you even had responsive design, and you didn't have Wi-Fi access in the courtroom. So we built it so you could download all the data onto the app and be able to use it in court, have the rules at your fingertips and things like that for e-discovery purposes. And then it evolved into a SaaS-based platform. So in its current iteration, that's been out for about 18 months. And COVID's been interesting. We had a lot of success with it at Legal Tech. And then as COVID's come on, we've brought on about, 30 or 40 firms. And so that's been really interesting. But at its core, EDiscovery Assistant is a case law database and database of rules from across the country. So states, federal district courts, and regulatory rules. And everything is tagged with EDiscovery issues. So if you want to figure out how to authenticate social media, specifically as it relates to Facebook, you click on those 3 tags and you're going to come up with the 50 cases across the country that have dealt with that issue. And you can narrow them by jurisdiction. So the goal of the database is to allow you to get to the answers that you need in a few clicks, as opposed to hours upon hours of research. So it's a really effective tool for those of us in eDiscovery that need to be staying up on things. Our users get regular updates of the case law, and it's a unique application for our space.
Yeah, sounds cool.
Great.
Yeah.
Yeah, great product. Great product.
Thanks, Tom.
Okay, so Tom, take us out.
Our standard. Actually, we have a standard last question, which we cued you in on there, Kelly. But I'm going to actually divide it up into 2 parts.
Oh God!
Special for you. Yes.
The
The first part
this
is.
not discussed before, so I have no idea what's about to happen.
Yeah, Rocky's totally in the dark on it. If you could play a game of horse with anybody in our profession, who would it be? That's the first part. And the second part, the standard part, is if you could spend a day with anybody in our profession, living or dead, not necessarily job related. If you could just spend a day talking about whatever, wandering the streets of Manhattan, eating pizza, with somebody from our profession, who would it be? So, game of horse, day doing whatever you want.
All right. Well, you gave me slight heads up on the second part, but not on the first part.
Yeah.
The second part, who would I want to spend a day with? I always choose to spend days with people who I find fascinating and who I can learn all kinds of new things from. So to that end, I would choose Judge John Facciola. So the Italian stallion. Fetch is one of my favorite human beings, and he just has the most amazing stories.
Yes.
His history and everything, and man, to eat Italian food with that man is an experience.
Well, of course, that means you'd have to go to Brooklyn,
Right?
he
Which I'm good
considers
with.
that any Italian food outside of New York is, especially pizza, is just not even worth the name food.
I would totally agree with that. I would totally agree with that. If I had to make secondary choices, I would have to say that there are 2 other individuals who I do get to spend time with that have the most fascinating array of stories and experiences, one of which is you, Tom, and the other of which would be David Horrigan from Relativity. The stories that you guys tell to me I just love them. So those will be my 3 choices.
And I could see Oregon playing basketball.
Oregon would be but horse. Now remember, we're not playing one-on-ones. It has to be a game of horse. So that kind of equalizes things.
This is hard. Well, I was a shooter. That was my job.
That's what made me think of the question.
Yeah. God, geez, you caught me off.
Leaving in the classic Larry Bird response when asked if he would play horse with anybody in the NBA, who would it be? He said, "I'd play with anybody as long as there's no dunking allowed."
That's a good response. That's a good response. Anybody in our profession? I don't even know anybody in our profession that plays basketball.
Yeah, that is a good point. Of course, that makes him a more worthy opponent.
That is true. That is true. Someone who would, let's put it out there this way. Anybody who wants to take me on in a game of horse, next time we're allowed to leave, I will be. I will be there.
Okay, we have a challenge. We have our first.
Well, what's on the line?
Every channel challenge. What's that?
What's on the line? I think we got to make this interesting.
Free lunch. Free Italian
lunch. Yeah, free lunch. I'll tell you this: if I lose a game of horse, I will take you to lunch at Charlie Bird, which is one of my brother's restaurants in New York City,
and
easily one of the finest eating establishments you'll ever go to.
All right, there you go. So we got a game of horse for lunch at Charlie Bird's online.
That's right. That's right.
So,
perfect.
Cool.
All right.
Well, thanks, Kelly.
Closing comments?
Thank you, guys.
No? All right. Well, thanks, Rocky, as always, for joining us. And Kelly, thanks so much for being our guest. Lots of great comments here. And you mentioned, meeting someplace live. I hope we'll be able to resume that again. That's the one thing that is really killing me about the whole virus thing is, people like you who I don't, run into on a regular basis. If I don't see you at Bill Hamilton's conference or Legal Tech or something, then, I don't see you. And that's,
I miss you guys.
Yeah, that's been tough. So
yeah,
with that in mind, we hope to see everybody out there at a conference sometime next year. And, and we'll see you again on the EDiscovery channel. Thanks, everyone.
Stay safe, everyone. Thanks, guys.